What's up, everyone, and welcome back to Cinematic Reviews. As always, I will be your host, Chris, and this is a show about all things movies and TV. Well, Happy New Year, everyone. Welcome to the first show of 2026. We close the book on 2025, and we look to the new year. And what better way to start than one of my favorite Marvel movies in history, and that is Captain America, the Winter Soldier. We'll be covering I believe it's the third movie in Phase 2, the ninth movie overall in the MCU. So we're making a pretty decent dent in the MCU marathon that we are doing every Friday on the show in preparation for Avengers Doomsday, which hopefully that first full-length trailer comes out on the Super Bowl, which everyone is theorizing will happen. We have a couple teasers going on in the theater right now, and many more promotional TV spots as well, I'm sure, leading up to the film. We're also waiting for a trailer for Spider-Man Brand New Day, which is the other MCU film that'll be releasing this year. We also have Daredevil Born Again Season 2 coming out in a couple months, on top of Wonder Man, which is a new series in the Marvel Universe as well. So a lot of Marvel content in the year of 2026. On the other side of Disney, we do have some Star Wars content coming out as well. The most anticipated one is going to be the Mandalorian and Grogu movie, which comes out in May. Super excited about that. We will be covering that on the show for sure. Same thing with Daredevil Born Again and Spider-Man Brand New Day. We will implement those into the marathon as we get into that part of the timeline. We are doing the release date order of the MCU. I thought about doing it in timeline order, but that can get a little bit wonky and a little crazy. So I thought I'd keep it simple and easy to follow along with by doing the release date order of the MCU. So we'll get to Spider-Man Brand New Day and Daredevil Born Again Season 2 at some point when that falls in the right order of things. But before we get into our feature film, we are going to go into the Stranger Things Season 5 finale, which came out on New Year's Eve. It was a 2-hour epic adventure, I guess is the best words you can describe it as. It's an incredible conclusion to the Stranger Things Season 5, as well as the series as a whole. There are spinoffs coming out for sure that have been confirmed by the Duffer Brothers themselves. But we'll get into that momentarily. A couple of reminders before we dive into our show today. You can watch the show every week at youtube.com. That's the Cinematic Reviews. You can also listen to the audio version on your favorite podcast listening service. You can also now watch the video version on Spotify as well. So you have YouTube and Spotify, depending on what you prefer to watch your video podcasts. You can also follow the social media pages on Facebook, X, and Instagram. Just search for Cinematic Reviews, and it will pop up there for you. I post all the artwork from each episode, along with other breaking news and other various things that come out of the Hollywood. That's about do it for the reminders. Let's head over to news and reactions to talk about Stranger Things Season 5 finale. So our reaction, like I said today, is going to be Stranger Things Season 5 finale, the final episode of not only Season 5, but the entire series as a whole. This will be a spoiler-full reaction, so if you have not seen the finale or any of Season 5 and you do not want to get spoiled, skip ahead about 10 minutes. While we talk about this finale, and then jump into Captain America. So if you don't want to be spoiled, just kind of rewind a little bit. About 10 minutes is about the time that'll take up today. We'll get into a more deeper dive of this season, every other season, at some point this year, because the Stranger Things season is on the schedule for 2026 for the show. So we'll take an episode per season, and Season 5 will be one of those episodes. So we'll do a more deeper dive. But today, we're just going to react the initial thoughts on this epic 2-hour finale of Stranger Things. So this is your last chance to fast forward about 10 minutes to get into the rest of the episode. So you do not want to get spoiled on the finale. So Stranger Things has come to an end after 10 incredible but long years since it was released on Netflix at first in 2016. Everybody pretty much returns for this final season and this final episode. We do get that clarification on where the hell Ted has been. I know that was a point I brought up on the last reaction we did for Volume 2. We do get that answered At the very end of the episode, he is alive. He is well. He is there at that graduation scene. So we can finally get that question, thoughts out of our minds of where the hell has Ted been. My theory has always been that he was in a coma and they just kind of told the family in the background. They didn't really feel that they needed to really dive into his character. They had a lot of other things that they needed to wrap up. I just find it really funny that one of the most disliked characters in the show pretty much got shafted there. He did kind of redeem himself a little bit by taking up his golf club and taking on a Demogorgon. He did get scratched to hell in the chest, so I'm not surprised that he probably was in some kind of coma-like state because of his wounds and whatnot. So, but we do get that conclusion, so we can pass on that. As far as the finale itself, I really liked it. Prepping for the show today, I've been kind of just out of curiosity, been seeing how all the other reviews have been going. It's been kind of a roller coaster this last season, and a lot of people like to compare this to Game of Thrones, but this finale is by far 1,000 times better than that Game of Thrones finale. So I'm just going to throw that out right there. I am one of the most voiced fans of Game of Thrones about how much I dislike that final season, especially that final episode of the series. Stranger Things, I think, landed it. It landed it the way that they wanted to. It landed it the way that it probably should have. You know, there's a lot of different routes they could have went. I know the Duffer Brothers released a statement during an interview where they did consider a Darth Vader-like style redemption arc for Vecna, but they chose to go with this route where he does not get redeemed. He admits to being this pure evil being as he is working with the Mind Flayer, whereas it kind of hinted that he could have been mind controlled and he was a victim, just like Will, just like Holly and all the others. But we get that scene where Vecna is telling Will that no, you are wrong. I am actually who I am. I am not working for the Mind Flayer. I'm working with it. So it pretty much confirmed that Vecna is pure evil and that Henry is beyond saving. This is who he is. My guess is that the Mind Flayer had some sort of sense in that evil inside of him, and that's why he was, I guess, quote unquote, chosen to be its weapon, its staff, its partner, it's whatever you want to call this relationship. That Mind Flayer probably sensed some kind of darkness or evil within Henry when they first came in contact with that rock that he found in that briefcase. But it's the best way I think possible that they could have ended Henry's character. We get Joyce with the final blow, which I think was very smart. You know, her hacking the head off of Vecna was very poetic and it was very earned. I think, in my opinion, the way they filmed it too was so perfect because every swing we got to see a flashback on what each character was thinking as they were watching this evil being that they have fought for the last 10 plus years, and it was just really redeeming and really therapeutic in a weird way for them to see Joyce chop off the head of Vecna right in front of them so that they can feel some kind of comfort, some kind of relief that he is now completely dead because they have seen him die in their hands. And it was beautiful because you get Mike, who has been tortured by this with the whole L thing. Will is remembering his time in the Upside Down. You have Nancy, who remembers Barb, and you have Dustin, who is remembering Eddie. It was just very, very poetic and it very well earned. And it was a great choice to have Joyce be the one to deal the final blow to Vecna. They could have easily had Will or 11 do that final blow, but I think it was perfectly well executed and perfectly well written to have Joyce be the one to give that final blow on Vecna, and it was an incredible moment. There's a lot. This finale is filled with a lot of incredible moments where, even like the graduation scene at the end, where you love seeing how happy these kids are of finally starting a normal life, after all this craziness that has happened in Hawkins. Elle, I'm sure a lot of people have mixed feelings. My sister, of course, was not a big fan of the ending with Elle's character, but it made sense. Elle was always going to be putting them in danger, even if she didn't mean to. So she had to disappear so that the rest of them could live normal lives and move on from these very traumatic events. And she would just be a reminder and a target if she would have stayed. And you can tell that she really needed to just kind of find her place in the world, and it wasn't necessarily in Hawkins. So I think everybody got the ending that they have earned and that they needed to move on from this very dark and traumatic event that has happened in Hawkins. And I think it was greatly performed by all the cast. It was greatly well written and executed by the Duffer Brothers. It is an ending that really stuck the landing, and not a lot of shows can say it. I absolutely love this. The action was great. The scene where they're fighting on that tower, communicating with each other on that tower, and it's crashing into this other dimensional planet that's going to crash down into Earth. It was very scary to see that scene with Steve, but at a split second, you realize that they probably won't let him die because he is one of the main cast members. And it just, to have him go out like that wouldn't have been earned or even made any sense. So, but I think it was really cool that they had Jonathan be the one to save him from his fall because of, the friction and the disagreements and the dislike between the two. It was kind of healing and therapeutic for their, butting heads. And it showed that Jonathan still cares about everybody in this group, even Steve, even if he doesn't like him, which he stated in this episode that, he still doesn't like him, but he still is going to risk his life to save his because of this bond that they have all felt, through over, this entire run of the show. And it's just really incredible. I love that each and every character had kind of their moment at the end. Dustin had his moment at the graduation. Mike got his moment with their last campaign down in the basement where he is explaining what really happened with Elle, and it kind of hints at that he eventually becomes a writer. Dustin and Steve still become friends, and they hang out with each other outside of school. You have Will, who ends up going to college and meeting new friends and having relationships on himself. Nancy has her thing going that she is, and Robin has her radio show that she has returned to, and Jonathan is doing his thing with school as well. And it's really cool to see that everybody had their kind of slice of heaven, so to speak, after these events. But it's an incredible series. It's an incredible way to end a show. And I guess the only thing left to do is the popcorn scale. And I'm giving the finale of Stranger Things the golden popcorn bucket. Like it's an incredible way to end this very beloved show. And I'm super excited to make it one of the seasons on the podcast finally, where we go through each of the 5 seasons and break it all down and really have fun with it and talk about it and dissect it and think of all the different emotions that we feel. Like this finale was a very emotional moment, very emotional event. I mean, this entire season 5 has been an incredible ride watching it through each of the 3 holidays that they released them on. It's a show that my sister and I got to bond with together, and it's an incredible show. If you definitely have not, seen the show in a while, definitely go back on Netflix and watch this from the beginning. That's kind of what got me thinking on doing, an entire season on the podcast, is just to kind of watch this all together from start to finish and just kind of experience this as a big event now that all 5 seasons are available to watch all the way through. And it's going to be an incredible ride. And I'm super excited to make Stranger Things one of the big events in 2026, along with Marvel Fridays, of course. So with that, let's head over to our feature film of the day, Captain America, the Winter Soldier.
Coming up on the drop zone, Cap.
You do anything fun Saturday night?
Well, all the guys in my barbershop quartet are dead, so no, not really.
If you ask Kristen out from statistics, she'd probably say yes.
That's why I don't ask.
Too shy or too scared?
Too busy. Was he wearing a parachute? No. No, he wasn't.
I joined S.H.I.E.L.D. to protect people.
Captain,
To build a better world?
Sometimes means tearing the old one down. And that makes enemies.
Are you ready for the world to see you as you really are? You look out the window. You know how the game works. Disorder, war. All it takes is one step.
We're gonna neutralize a lot of threats before they even happen.
thought the punishment usually came after the crime.
S.H.I.E.L.D. takes the world as it is, not as we'd like it to be.
This isn't freedom. This is fear.
You need to keep both eyes open.
Before we get started, does anyone want to get out?
Your work has been a gift to mankind. You've shaped the century. And I need you to do it one more time.
Gear up. It's time.
So Captain America, The Winter Soldier, came out on April 4th, 2014. It stars Chris Evans returning as Steve Rogers, a.k.a. Captain America. And we'll dive into the rest of the cast as we go along here. Looking at the box office, it had a roughly about $170 million budget, and it made a whopping $714 million at the box office, which is a massive, massive hit for a Captain America movie to be able to do this. And it wasn't your typical comic book movie either when it came out. With this coming out in 2014, you could tell it kind of took some aesthetics from Nolan's Batman trilogy, because that was not your typical comic book movie either. And this is, I would lump this in there with The Dark Knight as being, you know, game changers for the comic book movie world. And we'll get into that as well. I have a note on there so we can talk a little bit more about that. So, but with the cast, like I said, Chris Evans returning as Steve Rogers, which is fantastic. He is picking up where the first Avengers movie left off with taking down Loki. He is now doing missions for S.H.I.E.L.D., but he's also getting mixed up in this plot to convert S.H.I.E.L.D. into Hydra, which has now sprung up from underneath as it's been being rebuilt over the years since World War II. And this is kind of where the espionage spy thriller goes, where Chris Evans and Scarlett Johansson's Black Widow must go on the run in order to save S.H.I.E.L.D. and well, not necessarily S.H.I.E.L.D., but save everybody in the world from this plot to basically control the world by fear, which we see with the brand new helicarriers that have been created to basically target whoever S.H.I.E.L.D. deems worthy to take out as a threat. But it turns out Hydra wants to hijack this technology to basically prevent any of the heroes from becoming heroes. You know, when we get to that scene in the map where Robert Redford's character, Alexander Pierce, is explaining it, you know, you can see on the map there's Stephen Strange, there's Peter Parker, there's Bruce Banner. You know, they're targeting future Avengers and current Avengers. So it's a very dark plot, and it's a very espionage-like style to this movie that I really, really like. I love a good spy thriller. I'm a huge fan of the James Bond movies, particularly the Daniel Craig, and this has some of that James Bond aesthetic with all the spy stuff and the espionage that they have to take down. But Chris Evans is fantastic once again as Steve Rogers. I love his suit in here. He's got this new stealth suit that he wears on his missions now. It's not, you know, your typical red, white, and blue. It's this darker blue with the silver logo across the chest there. It's really cool. I like it. Even his shield looks a little bit more combat covert like. It's not that bright red and bright blue. It's more of a faded painted silver and blue like coloring on it, which was really cool. I love his the costume in here. And in the fun fact segment, there's a one of the points there on what kind of inspiration they took from it to make that, and I'll touch on that when we get to the fun facts. So also returning is, like I said, Scarlett Johansson as Natasha Romanoff, aka Black Widow. She is now pretty much embedded into Shield. She is clearly the number 2 to Nick Fury still, but once Chris Evans is forced to go on the run, she ends up joining him, and that's when Maria Hill comes into the picture, and then Maria Hill pretty much is the right-hand guy to Nick Fury throughout this most of the movie. But towards the end of the movie, we get to see that that one scene at the end where she ends up being employed by Stark Industries. But for the most part, she kind of has taken over that number 2 role from Black Widow, since she is now on the run with the Falcon and Captain America. Who we're going to talk about next is Anthony Mackie, who we haven't talked about yet really on the podcast. Anthony Mackie plays Sam Wilson, a.k.a. the Falcon. I think the only time we've really talked about him was when we did the review on Captain America Brave New World. So this is kind of his origin story into the MCU as he becomes the Falcon first, and then eventually takes over that mantle from Steve Rogers after Endgame. But this is his origin story in the MCU. Anthony Mackie is really fun as Sam Wilson. I really like the choice there to make him Sam Wilson. He is a huge comic book guy. He loves Marvel, and he was dying to be in this movie. And they found the perfect role, I think, for him in Sam Wilson, the Falcon. But kind of just looking at his IMDb here, I don't think we've really deep dived into it too hard on the show. So we're going to take this opportunity to do so. I'm trying to remember the first time I ever saw him, and it might be this movie. So I'm looking at this IMDb. I guess, no, I take that back. So it was probably The Hurt Locker and Eagle Eye. Eagle Eye, he was one of the majors in there after Shia LaBeouf. But The Hurt Locker, you know, alongside fellow MCU cast member Jeremy Renner, but also with Guy Pearce, Ray Fiennes. It was quite an incredible military movie from Catherine Bigelow. He's fantastic in there as Sergeant Sanborn. Eventually, we're going to do The Hurt Locker because that's such an incredible movie. I love watching that. We'll probably do some kind of salute the service military season at some point, and The Hurt Locker will be on there. But that's probably the first thing I remember seeing him in, other than Eagle Eye. I didn't see We Are Marshall till later on. That came out a few years before. That is the college football movie about Marshall University alongside Matthew McConaughey, which is a fantastic movie. He's really good in there. I think that's pretty much it. He did some shows beforehand, but really once getting casted into the MCU, he kind of really blew up. I mean, before that, he had the Adjustment Bureau, which he's pretty good in there. I didn't see that till after Captain America. Same thing with Real Steel. That came out also in 2011. He was Finn, the guy that kind of organized the boxing fights for Hugh Jackman in that movie. I didn't see that till later. Same thing with Man on the Ledge, just alongside Sam Worthington. I didn't see that till after Captain America. So yeah, it was pretty much The Hurt Locker, and then Captain America is when he really came into my life. Pain and Gain, that one I didn't see until after Captain America, surprisingly either, even though it's got my dude Mark Wahlberg in there. But he's fantastic in Pain and Gain. I love that movie. I would love to do this movie eventually as well. It's such a kind of oddball movie with an interesting cast of characters with Mark Wahlberg, Dwayne Johnson, Anthony Mackie, Ed Harris is in there. Ken Jeong is in there. Yeah, and it's based off of a true story. If you didn't know that, Pain and Gain was based off of real events that actually happened, and it's pretty crazy. It is a Michael Bay film, so take it for what it is with a Michael Bay film. I absolutely love a good Michael Bay film, so eventually it would be really awesome to do Pain and Gain as well. And then he gets casted in the MCU in 2014, and then that just kind of skyrocketed. He returns for Age of Ultron. He appeared in one scene in Ant-Man alongside uh, Paul Rudd. Then he joined Triple Nine, which I think is a very underrated movie, where he plays a corrupt cop alongside Casey Affleck, Woody Harrelson, Aaron Paul, Gal Gadot's in there, Kate Winslet's in there. It's got quite a cast, and it's a really interesting story. It's a good cop film, so if you want to check that out, go ahead. And then again, he returns to Captain America in 2016. And then again in 2018 for Infinity War. And then that's when he gets dusted. Spoiler, if you haven't seen that. Then returns again for Endgame for that final fight. He ended up in a episode of Black Mirror, which was a really interesting episode to put him in about the video game that has implemented AI. It was like I think it was like a Street Fighter like game that you with the help of AI. And then he got cast in Altered Carbon for Netflix. Then eventually he gets his own show within the MCU with the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which we have talked about a little bit on the show as well. That was during one of the first seasons of the show, actually. And then Brave New World would be probably the biggest film after that, where he gets crowned the current Captain America in the MCU. He does show up, he lends his voice in The Electric State, the Netflix film from the Russo brothers starring Chris Pratt and Millie Bobby Brown. And then he does Twisted Metal for Peacock, which is based off of course, the popular video game Twisted Metal. And he's really good in there too. I'm super excited to finally finish up season 2, which I have not yet. But yeah, so Anthony Mackie's had quite a interesting career. The MCU definitely, skyrocketed him into the oblivion for the Sam Wilson character, but he's terrific. I love having him in the MCU for sure as Sam. Another actor that we haven't really talked about, and I'm super excited to talk about, Sebastian Stan, who plays Bucky Barnes, aka the Winter Soldier. Bucky, of course, is in Captain America, but I don't remember us spending too much time on him, or not enough time. He's a fantastic actor, a very underrated actor. He himself has had quite an interesting career as well, being in all sorts of different movies throughout his career so far. Of course, once he became casted as, Bucky Barnes in the Captain America movie, that really boosted up his kind of stock in Hollywood. But I think it wasn't really until he returned for the Winter Soldier as the Winter Soldier where he just really, got shot up into, the stratosphere in Hollywood. He again returns in Ant-Man. He was in The Martian with Matt Damon, returns again for Civil War. He was in Logan Lucky, which is a great movie. I, Tonya, which is a great movie. He appears in the post-credit scene in Black Panther. Then he returns in Infinity War and Endgame. And then he shows up in the Devil All the Time Netflix film alongside Robert Pattinson and Tom Holland. Then he also gets kind of his own show with the Falcon and Winter Soldier as well. Then he was in Dumb Money as the CEO of Robinhood, which is, again, based off of a real story. Check out Dumb Money. That's a really interesting story about Keith Gill, the guy that basically bought up all the stock on GameStop, looked like a crazy nut job, but then ended up making a bunch of money because he believed in the stock market. And then, like I said, Sebastian Stan played Robin Hood, which ended up having some massive scandal, if I remember right. But definitely check out Dumb Money. It was one of my most underrated movies of 2023 for sure. He eventually then played the Donald Trump movie, The Apprentice, which I haven't seen yet. This came out last year. I think I need to finally see this one for sure because he does play Donald Trump in there. And then of course, he returns for Captain America: Brave New World this 2025, and then he was in the Thunderbolts as well. So he has had quite an interesting career. He also did what was that Hulu show, Pam and Tommy, which I haven't seen yet, but I heard it's really, really good, based on, of course, Pamela Anderson and her relationship with Tommy Lee. I need to really see that one finally. That one is currently streaming on Hulu. But yeah, like I said, Sebastian Stan, I think, is definitely a huge underrated actor, and he's fantastic as Bucky, aka the Winter Soldier, in here, and he has quite a character arc through this whole MCU that is very, very entertaining. I love Sebastian Stan, for sure. Robert Redford, the legendary Robert Redford, rest in peace, my friend. He joins the MCU alongside some other, legendary actors like Jeff Bridges. Wow, I can't believe I just spaced there. Yep, Jeff Bridges. But Robert Redford, fantastic career. Huge legend, of course. I think the first movie I ever saw him in was, let me look at his IMDb here. Probably, it's got to be All the President's Men, probably. I think that's definitely going to be the first one that I saw him. I just wasn't really a big Robert Redford guy growing up. It's just was an actor that I knew of, that I really appreciated, and I knew the legend that was, but it's just an actor I didn't really gravitate towards. But I have, of course, seen, All the President's Men, which I remember him being fantastic in it. I haven't seen it in forever, but I do remember him being awesome in it, and I need to revisit that for sure. But, Robert Redford, we all know the legend that is, and he did end up passing away last year in 2025, which is unfortunate. But he will ever be engraved in the MCU lineup as Alexander Pierce, who is the sort of overseer of S.H.I.E.L.D., but he ends up becoming the villain of this movie, who hires the Winter Soldier to take out Nick Fury so that he can control Project Insight for his own personal gain and own reasons, where he targets, like I said, heroes like Stephen Strange and Peter Parker and Bruce Banner, so that he can stop them and he can infect Hydra throughout the world. So Robert Redford is kind of the villain in here, but when I do the villain scale on today's episode, for me, I did it on the Winter Soldier because, well, the title of the movie is Captain America: The Winter Soldier. It's not Captain America Alexander Pierce, but Alexander Pierce is the guy that's really pulling the strings. But I thought it'd be more fun to do it on the Winter Soldier because we get to see him more. It's Bucky, so there's a history there, and he's an excellent character to dive into as a antagonist to Captain America. Frank Grillo, my dude, he joins the MCU as well in this film as Brock Rumlow. Frank Grillo is like the poster child for underrated actors, I think. He's been in such many different projects. He's had a very awesome career. This movie was probably the first time I ever saw him in, and then I was hooked right away when I saw him as Rumlow. I'm looking through his IMDb here. I'm pretty sure this is what got me into him. This is, well, it looks like he had a minor role in Minority Report. So I probably saw Minority Report before and just didn't realize it was Frank Grillo. But the movie that I remember him seeing in for sure was Captain America. And then I fell in love with what he is. He's been in different franchises like the Purge franchise. He's been in some TV shows like Prison Break and The Shield, as he was one of the officers in The Shield, I think. He was in Warrior alongside Joel Edgerton, which is a fantastic MMA movie. If you are looking for a great boxing MMA like style movie, definitely check out Warrior with Tom Hardy and Joel Edgerton. But Frank Grillo plays the trainer for Joel Edgerton, so he's really good in there. Then he shows up in The Gray with Liam Neeson. End of Watch, which Actually, no, that's probably yeah, because Captain America came out in 2014. So that was probably the first time I ever did see him. Was an End of Watch as the Sarge for Jake Gyllenhaal and Michael Pena, which we did on the podcast. So definitely go check out that episode. So End of Watch. That's got to be the first one I ever saw him in, because I didn't see Warrior and The Gray until after End of Watch. I went to End of Watch opening weekend in the theater. So I'm gonna go with End of Watch. That was the first time I saw Frank Grillo, and I just thought he was awesome. And then he was in Homefront with Jason Statham. Then he joined the Purge franchise the same year that he did the MCU, which was awesome, starting two big franchises like that. He returns in Civil War, which we'll talk about him again as Crossbones. He does another sequel to The Purge. And then he returns in Endgame. And that's pretty much it. He was in Lamborghini a few years ago, but I haven't seen that yet. So yeah, I think. And then Superman. That's probably Superman and Peacemaker are probably the most recent ones that I've seen him in as Rick Flag Sr. So that's what he's doing right now since he was killed off in the MCU. He has now switched over to DC as Rick Flag Sr., the dad to Rick Flag, of course, from Suicide Squad. But yeah, it's great to see Frank Grillo. I think he's an incredible actor, incredible person, and definitely love seeing him and stuff. So it's really nice to see him as part of the MCU. Sam Jackson, like I said, returns as director Nick Fury. He ends up getting kind of obliterated in this movie. I think I have it on the iconic scenes. At least I hope I do. I don't. So I guess we'll talk about it now. So that scene where he's got the AI car is freaking incredible, where he's, leaving S.H.I.E.L.D. He's starting to discover that there's a plot behind the scenes trying to take down S.H.I.E.L.D. from within. You have that scene of the cop cars coming up, and he goes, "You want to see my lease?" And then it turns out those cops are actually part of the, what do you want to call them? The task force that Alexander Pierce orders to take out Sam Jackson. So we get that cool scene where they're, banging through the bulletproof glass of the SUV with the, the battering ram. And then he's got the, machine gun that shoots up out of the console, and he turns it and fires it through, which was really cool. There's just a lot of really cool action in here. And we'll talk about that a little bit more as we break down these iconic scenes. But that scene where he's taking out these cops with his AI car is freaking awesome. And then, like I said, Maria Hill returns as Kobe Smulders returns as Maria Hill to kind of back up Nick Fury once Natasha has to go on the run with Chris Evans. But Kobe Smulders is great too. I love seeing Maria Hill throughout this MCU. And that kind of rounds out the cast for this. It's kind of a more contained cast. It's not a big Avengers movie, so the cast is pretty self-contained, but still really awesome. Now the directors. I've been waiting this entire time to talk about the directors. Anthony Russo and Joe Russo, of course, brothers. They changed the MCU. Like, when this movie came out, this is what the MCU should be. It giving us entertaining, emotional, yet very different comic book movies, where it's not the typical Batman movie like you see from Joe Schumacher or Tim Burton. It's changing the game like The Dark Knight did with Nolan. They changed the MCU and they changed the comic book movies, I think, again with this movie. It was such an incredible choice to make a Captain America movie into this spy, conspiracy, espionage, political thriller, and it's just incredible. I think the story is not really cookie cutter, but it's very easy to follow. It's not too convoluted or too complicated. And what Anthony and Joe Russo do for the MCU going forward is incredible. They go on to direct Captain America: Civil War, which in its own right is basically another Avengers movie, but it's centered around Captain America. Then they get tasked the Avengers: Infinity War and Endgame story, which were fantastic as a giant, 4 or 5 hour event between the two movies. And then now they are returning to the MCU for both Avengers Doomsday and Secret Wars, which is going to be freaking awesome to see them back at the helm. But to kind of look through what they've done outside of the MCU is pretty awesome. Since they are brothers, they do a lot of the directing together. So the kind of the movies that they have done together, let's pull up the IMDb here. So most recently, they've done The Electric State with Chris Pratt, Millie Bobby Brown for Netflix, which was a pretty decent movie about a post-apocalyptic world with robots. And Chris Pratt and Millie Bobby Brown become unlikely friends as they, search for Millie Bobby Brown's brother. Before that, they helped produce some other Netflix movies like The Gray Man, Extraction. They produced Cherry then they also directed as well from Apple TV starring Tom Holland, of course, as a former military medic turned bank robber, drug addict while he suffers PTSD, which is a very incredible movie. I absolutely love Cherry. I think Tom Holland's fantastic in there. They helped produce 21 Bridges with Chadwick Boseman, fellow MCU cast member. That's a great movie as well as 21 Bridges. And they probably got shot into the fame from the show Community, which I think Kevin Feige said was the reason why they were hired for Captain America the Winter Soldier, was because of their huge success and creativity with the show Community, which if you haven't seen the Community, it's a fantastic show. This came out back in 2009 and it ran for about 6 years. It's an incredible, entertaining and funny show about a community college and all the shenanigans that they get into. But yeah, it's definitely check out Community if you haven't seen it. But Joe and Anthony Russo are one of my favorite directors of all time. Well, I guess they are technically actors. They do appear in some of their shows, especially the MCU. They have popped up. They even pop up in here. I believe it's Joe. Yeah, so Joe pops up as the doctor that takes care of Natasha's wound when she gets shot. And then Joe also appears in Endgame, that scene at the beginning with Captain America and the support group, and we'll talk about that when we get to Endgame. So Joe is kind of an actor himself. I think both of them appeared in episodes of Community as well, so just kind of putting themselves in their projects, which is pretty cool. Another notorious director to do that is, of course, Quentin Tarantino, who puts himself into his own films, but they did an incredible job with Captain America and all the MCU projects that they do in the future. I'm very excited for them to return to do an Avengers movie. It's very exciting, and I absolutely love their work. Whenever their name is attached to something, I'm automatically going to go see it, because they are incredible writers and incredible visionaries when it comes to entertaining projects. So kudos to Anthony and Joe for giving us one of the most unique, entertaining experiences with a comic book movie. So a couple more notes that I want to touch on before we get into the iconic scenes, favorite quotes, and fun facts. The spy thriller espionage part of this, I've already talked about it already, but it's such a unique thing that the MCU is doing, and this was a huge swing for the MCU. Like, if this was either going to be a huge success like it was, or it was going to be totally botched and not work out. But they trusted in Joe and Anthony Russo. They trusted in Chris Evans. They trusted in the writing, the direction that they wanted to go with the Captain America character, leading into, Age of Ultron, and then eventually what would transpire and explode into what it is, Civil War between him and Tony Stark. But this changed everything for comic book movies. It made everybody look at comic book movies differently. If it were up to me, this would have won an Oscar for sure. And let me double check to see if it did win any. I think it was nominated for a few. Oh, so it won 5. It was nominated for quite a bit here. Let me pull up the ones that it won. So it was nominated for a bunch of Saturn Awards, a bunch of Golden Schmoes Award. What else did it? It's a bunch of nominees here. So it kind of had the Dark Knight effect, but not to that extent. All right, let's go this way. I'm going to pull up the Oscars that it won. The Winter Soldier Oscar winners. Okay, so here. So it was nominated for Critic Choice Awards. It was nominated for Best Visual Effects in the 87th Academy Awards. Nominated for a bunch of Saturn Awards. And that looks like it was about it. So that's cool. That was at least it's a Oscar nominated movie, which is fantastic. So, and it's well deserved. You know, the uniqueness that it is, the movie with the conspiracy theory political thriller, it is fantastic, and it changed comic book movies just like the Dark Knight did. Like I said, I lumped this in with the Dark Knight for sure as comic book character based movies that changed not only how Hollywood sees it, but how the audience sees comic book movies. And I hope we get more like this. You know, Civil War is another great follow up to this because of what they were able to expand on and dive into the Captain America character more. I was always on the side of Captain America Civil War is an Avengers movie, but after rewatching it the last few years, it is actually a Captain America movie. He is the main focus of the movie, even though, you know, you have Tony Stark and all the Avengers movies, all the Avengers characters from the movies. Is at the end of the day, it is a Captain America movie, and it all spawns from not just this movie, but you get a little bit of it in the first Avengers movie between the squabble between Tony Stark and Chris Evans. But in here, this is really where you get to see who the character of Steve is, and he's going to punch through a wall if that means standing up for what he believes, even if he has to fight off a government agency like SHIELD or Hydra by himself. He is going to stick to his guns and what he believes, and he's going to do it, just like you see in Civil War, and I'm excited to talk about that. So let's dive into the iconic scenes. I was able to pull up 5 here. This was tough because there's a lot of great scenes here, but again, these iconic scenes are scenes that pop into your mind when you first hear Captain America, the Winter Soldier. So these are the 5 that pop up in my mind first. The first one being Steve running around Sam at the very beginning, where they're going around Washington. Steve is going around, on your left, on your left, on your left. And you get to that point where Sam's like, yeah, I get it. You're on my left. And then you get to that final turnaround and he goes, are you kidding me? As he's running. And it's such a great way to introduce these two characters together in a very creative way. And only in a Steve Rogers like fashion where he's running, an insane amount. He ran like 15 miles. And I love that line where Sam's resting against a tree and you could tell Steve isn't really even sweating, but he had a good workout. And he goes, you should take a lap for that. Did you take it? I assume you took it, as he's just still standing there, really giving you the first impression of who the Sam character is and how Anthony Mackie's going to play him in this chemistry that immediately started between Sam and Steve. And now, Sam is now the current Captain America in the MCU. It's really awesome to see the origins of this long friendship that they started growing together. The next scene I think about is Cap going up against Batroc on the ship, the mission that we get introduced to at the beginning of the film, where you get that scene on the bridge where he's fighting Batroc and Batroc's talking shit to him, where he's like, "Oh, I thought you must be just a shield." So then Cap, puts the shield on his back, takes his helmet off, and he goes blow for blow with Batroc and just whoops his ass, in hand-to-hand combat. So I always think of that fight on the ship. Then we have the iconic Steve and Natasha kiss on the escalator, which is very iconic. And then we have probably my favorite scene and probably the most watched scene, not only in this movie, but in the MCU as a whole. And that is that incredible street fight between Steve and Bucky, aka the Winter Soldier, where the Winter Soldier has his hand knife and he's twirling it around. Steve is trying to dodge it while also throwing punches with the shield, and you have Natasha, who is running around these cars, shots and trying to trick the Winter Soldier. You have Sam holding off the other guys with his rifle. It's such an incredible, and the hand-to-hand combat in this scene was something that I don't remember seeing in a comic book movie, let alone an action movie. The way that Sebastian Stan trained with that knife on set, and I'll talk about that a little bit more in the fun facts as I have that behind the scenes there. It's just truly authentic and very entertaining fight scene in the street, and it's just one of my top 5 favorite scenes to watch in the MCU, and it's just seared into my brain when I hear the title Captain America: The Winter Soldier. So that is definitely my most iconic scene in my mind, not only in this movie but in the MCU as a whole. And then we have, of course, that battle for the gunships where you have Steve and Sam jumping from ship to ship to insert the new directives for the gunships to target themselves instead of, millions and millions of people. So you have Sam with his falcon wings flying around, inserting one of them there. You have Steve fighting off one ship, and then he ends up going to the third ship and fighting Bucky there, and he gets shot to heck by Bucky. I think he takes one to the back of the leg, and then he gets one on the gut too, but he's still able to take down the gunships as they crash. But that's really fun, entertaining fight sequence at the end. But the most iconic scene is definitely that street fight between Steve and Bucky, where he's dodging the knife with the shield. It's really freaking awesome. Favorite quotes. This was a little tough too, so I tried to shorten it up a little bit. Most of these are from Steve. Steve's got a lot of great lines in here. I did throw a Sam and a couple Fury ones in there because I thought they were hilarious. So I'll just go through all the Steve Rogers ones here. Before we get started, does anyone want to get out? Which, the reason why I didn't include that in the iconic scenes is because I wanted to talk about it here. I guess you could put it in the iconic scenes if you wanted to. I probably should have. But that scene, just like that street fight with Steve and Bucky in the street with the knife twirling, this is another one that is like one of the most rewatched scenes, and it's very quick, but it's really awesome how they executed this, where, screw it. This is going to be in the iconic scenes. I'm going to put that in there. I try to have 5 iconic scenes. We're going to put it in 6. We're going to make an exception because this movie's awesome. But anyways, I digress. This scene is incredibly well filmed, where you get to look inside this tiny little elevator. There's Steve in the middle, and there's like 12 guys around him. And I don't know how any other person other than Captain America gets out of this situation. And it was really, really awesome with the choreography, the way he's able to use his strength to overpower these 12 guys. It's just really awesome. And I love how it starts where he's looking around, he realizes what's going on, and he utters those awesome words: "Before we get started, does anyone want to get out?" And it's just an incredible moment for the Steve character, the Captain America character. It's just really awesome. Another one on your left, of course, which not only gets quoted at the beginning of this movie, but the end of the movie, and then it also gets quoted in Endgame. And then you have this iconic line from, first it came from Bucky, but then Steve says it at the end of the movie to try to get Bucky to snap back out of this mind control that he has been put under. Because I'm with you till the end of the line, which is kind of their macho with each other, which is awesome. And then this last one is from the trailer, of course, but this isn't freedom. This is fear, as Nick Fury is showing Cap these gunships that he's hoping will end all the wars. But Steve sees what it really is. It's control. It's fear. It's not right. So really, really iconic line. A couple from Nick Fury here. This man declined the Nobel Peace Prize. He said that peace is not an achievement, but a responsibility. And he goes, it's stuff like this that gives me trust issues. I mean, who turns down a peace prize because they feel like peace is a responsibility? Like, that's a shady guy there if he's turning down a peace prize. And I totally agree with Nick Fury here. And then I already kind of spoiled this one, but you get that scene with him and the cop where he goes, you want to see my lease, as he's looking at his SUV. And then this one from Sam. I always chuckle at this one. So before he gets into that fight with Rumlow in that falling down building, Rumlow is going off about, Hydra is unstoppable. You might as well give up now. All we know is pain. All you know is going to pain. And Anthony Mackie just goes, man, shut the hell up. And then he just throws a punch at him. It's so great. I love Sam Wilson in here. Now some fun facts to kind of wrap things up here. Unlike other films in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, this movie minimized the use of visual effects as much as possible. Anthony Mackie elaborated. The Russos, what they did that was so great was they wanted to stay with live action, which is a dying art form. It truly is. John Wick kind of revitalized it, but at this point in Hollywood, everything was about special effects and protecting actors and stunt doubles and all that, and CGI. I'm glad that the Russo brothers leaned into live action. Anthony Mackie continues saying, if they could build it, they built it. If we could do it, we did it. They wanted to do as little CGI as possible. That's why the movie looks so great. And it's true. The fact that they did most of this stuff practically on set was great. Going into this with that mindset of we're going to use as little CGI as possible. We're going to do this stuff for real. We're going to give it an authentic look, and it just makes this movie so much better. I appreciate it when directors go into films especially films like this, where there's going to be a lot of action, with that mindset. During filming, Sebastian Stan would walk around all day practicing his moves with a plastic knife because he wanted this movements to feel natural, which you see that in the final product. Like, you truly believe that Sebastian Stan can fight like this because he was constantly training off camera when he had every chance. It's really, really awesome, the dedication that he put into those fight sequences. The Falcon's flight gear sports a Stark Industries logo. This, of course, indicates they are the manufacturer. So Tony Stark did create the Falcon wings, which is awesome. When asked why Tony Stark, Bruce Banner, and any of the other Avengers weren't called to help Captain America or Black Widow in the film, the screenwriters explained that the movie only takes place in about 3 days. Therefore, the characters didn't have a chance to contact them. Makes sense. I'm glad that they had a actual explanation to why Captain America was the only one that can handle this, because it spans between 3 days, which is crazy to think of when watching this movie. And that's a lot of the question, with like Thor or the Iron Man movies, or even, some of the Spider-Man movies, like, why didn't they call the Avengers for this stuff? Well, because they're on a time constraint, especially this, where you only have 3 days. You don't have time to wait for Tony to come all the way down to Washington, D.C. He has his own stuff to worry about, and Captain America has to take care of his own things. We need those solo movies to watch that character grow and see that character arc. So when we get to these Avengers movies, you can see how they have changed and improved over time. It's really smart to do it that way. Cap's new costume takes cues from the super soldier outfit he wore when he served as director of S.H.I.E.L.D. in the comics. I really like that suit. It's one of my favorite suits for sure. While writing the script, there was a big possibility of Hawkeye being in the film. However, the writers felt that there were too many characters introduced, and they didn't want Hawkeye to be there without any depth. They instead decided to write a small scene in which Hawkeye and his whereabouts are mentioned, which was shot but ultimately wasn't included in the film. He does end up coming back for Age of Ultron, which is kind of like his story. And then he does appear in Civil War along with the rest of the Avengers. Hawkeye was originally going to appear in several scenes, including a fight sequence where he would have battled Captain America after a prolonged chase through the city. That would have been awesome. Scheduling issues with Jeremy Renner prevented this. Originally, Hawkeye was sent to hunt down Steve, catching up to him, and the two of them fighting. Steve wins, but finds Hawkeye whispering to him to make his defeat look real, revealing Hawkeye deliberately lost because of a Quinjet is recording the whole thing overhead. He also alerts Steve about the tracking device in his suit. That would have been freaking cool to see that, but that sucks that Jeremy Renner wasn't able to schedule that. That sounds like an awesome scene. In the comics, the Winter Soldier trained Natasha Romanoff, and the two eventually were in a romantic relationship. Obviously, that did not happen in the MCU because this is where she meets him for the first time, and she was trained by the other Black Widows in the Red Room. In his first comic incarnation, Falcon had the superpower to communicate with birds telepathically. The film version, much like the Marvel Ultimate Comic Books version, does not give Falcon any superpowers. I like that change. I remember reading some comics with Falcon and this telepathic power to talk to birds. Was not a big fan of it, so I'm glad that they went with the ultimate route where he just is a former soldier, just like Cap, I guess Cap isn't technically a former soldier, but he's soldier turned Avenger, just like Mackie is, where he doesn't give superpowers. It's awesome to see that Sam Wilson is a superhero on his own. And that's, if you remember the Falcon and Winter Soldier show and the Captain America Brave New World movie, Sam didn't want the super soldier serum. He wanted to be able to do it on his own. He wanted to show that a normal person can still be a hero, and I really respect that for sure. Sebastian Stan had to wear extensions to play the Winter Soldier as he was unable to grow his hair out in time for the film in between projects. The only time in the MCU where his long hair is natural and not including extensions is in the sequel, Captain America Civil War. The Winter Soldier has long hair so as to imply that Hydra cared so little for his personal maintenance and grooming that he didn't bother to give him haircuts. That is very evil to not let a guy have a haircut. That is just pure evil. So those are the fun facts. I absolutely love Captain America, the Winter Soldier. One of my favorite MCU movies, one of my favorite movies of all time. That, of course, will reflect in the MCU ranking, which we'll do here in a second. But it's an incredible movie. If you haven't seen the Winter Soldier in a while, definitely go watch it. It's an incredible action movie, incredible political spy espionage thriller centered around a comic book hero. It's Anthony and Joe Russo did a fantastic job, and they make the MCU better. Like, them joining on as one of the main directors for this universe is perfect. And now that they are returning for Avengers Doomsday, I'm super, super excited to see their take on another Avengers movie with everything that has gone on between their last project Endgame and then now this one. So I would not trust anybody more than the Russo brothers to take on a Marvel film. They are fantastic and I love it. And this movie is incredible. So let's get to the ranking. You could probably guess what I'm going to rank everything in here. So first up, we have the MCU ranking. I'm going to pull up the list here so I can kind of just go over everything that is around it. I'm not going to go through the whole list because we will be here forever if I list off all 50 projects. But the Captain America, the Winter Soldier, clocks in at number 6 on the list. So it is the first top 10 MCU film that we have done on Marvel Friday so far. Looking around it, we have Captain America Civil War at 7, Spider-Man Far From Home at 8, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 at 9, and then Guardians of the Galaxy 1 closing out the top 10. Right above it, we have Spider-Man Homecoming at 5, Avengers Endgame at 4, Avengers Infinity War at 3, Spider-Man No Way Home at 2, and then Deadpool and Wolverine is my number 1 MCU film. I don't think I can move it up any further because I absolutely love Homecoming. Endgame is an incredible. Infinity War is a masterpiece in its own right. No Way Home is such an incredibly well-made movie, comic book movie, Marvel movie, Spider-Man movie, all the above. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. And then you have Deadpool and Wolverine, which is also one of my favorite movies of all time. They just did an outstanding job. So I think it's locked in at 6, but it's still really, really awesome. That is in my top 10. Looking at the villain scale. Now, again, as a reminder, we look at the performance by the actor as the villain. In this case, we're going to do Bucky Barnes, a.k.a. the Winter Soldier. We do the costume and then the motivation as a villain. So, looking at the motivation. Now, I saved this part because I knew I was going to talk about him in the villain scale here. So, his motivation is the fact that he is mind controlled by Hydra, by this Russian experiment when he was captured at the end of World War II and then cryogenically frozen. So now he comes back in with Steve Rogers, who was also frozen over time. It's such a heartbreaking thing for a villain because he has no control of it. He has no memory. So he is going in blind, and it just sucks that, poor Bucky is having to fight his best friend and not even know it. So it's such a heartbreaking and relatable and emotional villain. The performance is outstanding by Sebastian Stan. The fact that he took such dedication in the fight sequence to be doing them, practicing them constantly off camera, shows that he really wanted to make this performance incredible, and it truly shows on the final product. And then the costume looks incredible with the robotic metal arm. He's all teched out in black tactical. The mask, which is opposite of what Captain America is, was an incredible nod, as he is the antagonist. He's the anti-Captain America. I love the look. I love the long hair. I love the kind of blacked out eyes around him. He had an incredible outfit in here. I love it. And I love how it kind of evolves over time in the MCU. But this is probably my favorite look of him. This like iconic look of Winter Soldier that we all know now, with the metal arm and the Russian red star on the shoulder there. Truly incredible. So you can probably guess what I'm going to give this, and that is 5 Thanos heads for the villain in here. Now, Alexander Pierce, if I wanted to put a scale on him, probably that's a tough one. I'd probably give him a 3. Robert Redford, great performance. He's a legendary actor. He gives a really, really good performance here in a comic book movie. The costume, he looks like your typical douchebag politician, and his motivation, he just wants to be an evil son of a bitch. He got influenced by the Hydra propaganda, and it's just an evil son of a bitch. So I'd give him a 3 on the villain scale. Not like iconic, not like very memorable, but it's still a decent performance. So I would give, if I were to scale Alexander Pierce, who is technically the puppet master here, the actual villain, I would give it 3. But to me, the Winter Soldier is the villain to rank here because, well, it is Captain America, the Winter Soldier, and we see him more. He is the actual antagonist to Captain America here. And then finally, the popcorn scale. You could probably guess, with it being at number 6, on what I'm going to give it. I'm going to give it the golden popcorn bucket. It's an incredible movie. It's an incredible MCU movie. It's an awesome Captain America movie. I absolutely love it. It's a game changer for comic book movies going forward. Anthony and Joe Russo did a fantastic job with this movie. It's just one of my favorite movies ever in Marvel. One of my favorite movies of all time, and I love rewatching it, with the action, with the espionage, with the characters, the performances, the music. The music is awesome in here. It's truly an incredible film. So I'm giving it the golden popcorn bucket on the scale. So that'll do it for this week's Marvel Friday episode. Next week, we're heading to the Avengers again with Age of Ultron, I believe. Nope, I think I got that wrong. We're going with Guardians of the Galaxy. Wow, I can't believe I left out Guardians. So we will do Guardians of the Galaxy next week, and then the week after that, that's when we will do Age of Ultron. Guardians of the Galaxy is, I'm super excited to finally do that first one. I love the first one, and then Age of Ultron I think is very underrated, so I'm excited as well to do that one. So we will do Guardians of the Galaxy, and then we will do Age of Ultron. Coming up on the 4th, which would be this Sunday, the first annual Cinemac Awards will be coming out. So it's an award show that I've been working on all year last year, technically. And now I'm excited to introduce that. It's going to be my version of the Oscars because I have been out on the Oscars the last few years because I just don't find it entertaining anymore. When the show is over, I'll go look and see who all the winners were and to see if the film that I believe won did get an award. So this is my take on the Oscars, and I had a lot of fun building it, and I'm gonna have a lot of fun hosting and recording it for you all, and I hope you enjoy it once it releases on Sunday. So just mark your calendars for the first annual Cinemac Awards coming out on January 4th, which will be this Sunday. It's all sorts of categories like Best Film of the Year, Best Comedy, Best Musical, Best Actress, Best Director. I'll give my top 5 films and top 5 series of the year. I'll also predict what I think will be some of the more anticipated movies of 2026, and if any of them will end up winning awards. So it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm super excited to finally release my version of the Oscars. And then we'll do some other new releases that I'm kind of putting together a schedule. That schedule will get released at some point, probably after the award show comes out. I'll probably post all the different episodes we'll be doing. But we'll be doing a lot of new releases this year, like Mandalorian Grogu, Scream 7's coming out, Mortal Kombat 2, The Odyssey from Christopher Nolan, Project Hail Mary with Ryan Gosling. We'll have a double feature night with Toy Story 5 and Shrek 5, since those come out on the same weekend. You have the third Doom movie coming out, Super Mario Galaxy movie, which I'm super excited about. Probably my most anticipated film of the year, Spider-Man Brand New Day, and then, of course, Avengers Doomsday, which Marvel Fridays has been leading up to. So we will end Marvel Fridays this year in December. So got a lot of fun stuff. Some of the seasons that I'll be doing throughout the year, I've already mentioned Stranger Things. We're going to do an episode on each season. So that'll be a 5-episode event. We'll return to the Shire in Middle Earth with the Hobbit extended versions with those. We're going to do Back to the Future finally. I love Back to the Future, so I'm excited to do that. And then we're going to do a Power Rangers season. So I've been thinking about this a lot, and I think we're going to pull the trigger on it this year. We're going to do a 3-part Power Rangers event. We're going to do the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers movie. We're going to do the Turbo Power Rangers movie, and then we'll end it with Saban's Power Ranger movie that came out a few years ago, which was their attempt at making this entire franchise, but it just ultimately failed. But I really like it. I think it's very underrated, and I wish they would have given it one more chance to make it into a franchise. So we're going to do a Power Rangers season this year because I grew up watching the Power Rangers, and I haven't seen these movies in a long time, so I'm excited to revisit those. So that's kind of what the schedule will look like. Again, after the award show, I'll release a full schedule on the social media pages, so check those out on Facebook, X, and Instagram. And I'll probably run through it again, maybe towards the end of the Guardians of the Galaxy episode as well next week. So with that, Happy New Year again to all of you. I hope it is a great year. I'm super excited about all the content that I'll be releasing on the podcast. Also, check out my football podcast, the End Zone Report. The episode on week 17 just released this past week. And then we'll end off the regular season with week 18 reactions next week. And then we'll get into the NFL playoffs with those episodes. So if you are a football nut like I am, go ahead and check out the End Zone Report on YouTube and Spotify. And then also take a look at the cinematic archives on the show. If you're new to the show, go check out all the episodes that I've done. We've done a little over 200 now. I believe Superman last year was the 200th episode. So if you want to go check out that, go ahead. So a lot of content for you all to discover if you're new to the channel. So, and thank you for supporting it. Last year was the first year that the podcast has turned into video and on YouTube. It was a huge milestone, and I'm excited to make some more content for y'all in 2026. So have a good, happy new year. Be safe, and we will see you all next time.